from the Star Conspiracy and the content channel, Hey, Bret Star. I'm Bret Star. This is Long Strange Trip, Episode 12.
I'm Kevin Mangum. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at the Star Conspiracy. And I've been here for a lifetime, approaching 18 years, I guess, this July or August or somewhere around there. I've done just about everything here at the agency, with the exception of maybe operations, which nobody here wants me to touch, rightfully so. I've lived in Texas my whole life. I went to TCU, started here immediately after that, which was almost 18 years ago, from a small town, and married, beautiful wife, 2 beautiful kids. That's me.
And oh yeah, you're an owner.
That too. Yeah, there's that part.
So you're one of the partners and owners of the Star Conspiracy, 18 years. And little known fact, and I could be wrong about this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you start before I did?
Maybe around the same time. You were this. So I had come in, and you were in Boston when I first joined the agency. And one of the guys who I knew really well here just kept talking about this guy in Boston. He's like, the only guy that matters here at the agency is Bret Star.
Crazy couple of years. At what point for you did you realize that the pandemic was going to change everything?
I think it took me a while to really accept and realize what we were facing. I remember when it first started for me, we were here in the office. We'd been preparing for a big pitch. We were actually scheduled to fly out to Utah the next morning, and we'd been working on this pitch for 2 weeks. Several of us were really excited about it, and then all of a sudden, we get a call from the client the day before we're supposed to fly out saying, "Hey, CEO just sent all 500 of us home, so meeting's off. We're going to have to put everything on hold, figure out what's going on." And I remember thinking at that time how crazy this is, and that this is going to be over in 2 or 3 weeks. And so stunned by, hey, we're going to be back out there in no time. 2 to 3 weeks came past. 2 or 3 weeks turned into 2 to 3 months. And I think it was really at the end of the summer before it really hit me. I was thinking, you're hearing all this stuff about coronavirus can't live in the heat. And I'm like, well, we live in Texas, so we're set. And of course, that didn't turn out to be true. So I think it was the end of the summer, whenever all of the conversations around our kids going to school or they're not going to school. I was like, man, this is here. This is here for a little while.
Yeah. There's just, you looking back on it, you mentioned like thinking that the heat might have an impact on, and it's really easy to look back on that and kind of laugh and say, oh, the heat. At the time, we didn't know anything. And so something would come out on the news like every other day that was just like some ray of sunshine to hold on to, that, oh, the cold's going to have an impact on it. The heat's going to have an impact on it. It's, a one and done wave or, whatever. And, disinfecting our groceries, wiping everything down, wearing masks, not wearing masks. It was just something crazy and different. And on top of all that, we also had a business to run, and we had to make decisions about those types of policies based on, for us, it was mostly numbers being reported on, case numbers, positivity rates, and stuff like that. But we had to make some pretty controversial decisions because the whole thing has been controversial the whole time. And it was, for me, I don't know about for you, but for me, it was a whole another layer of decision maker stress. Who's in charge of the pandemic response in your family? Because somebody's in charge, right?
Well, yeah, it was me. Me.
So, obviously a big change in just kind of the rhythm of your life because of the pandemic with travel and working from home. And I know you're not you weren't a work from home kind of person. You like being in the office. You like your team to be around you. I'm curious when you think about, the impact of all these forced changes because travel was ripped away. It was ripped away from me because in every situation that we've ever been in, when we've been in cash crunches or whatever, and our back's been against the wall, and we, cut discretionary expenses and cut travel. There's always, exceptions about, travel that ends up being critical. And you always seem to be part of at least one of those. And so it really had to be shut down completely before, you stop traveling. But these are all big changes in terms of just the, kind of pattern of life and who you're around, where you spend your time. I'm curious if the pandemic changed your overall outlook on life at all.
I think it did. If I don't know, maybe change isn't the right word, but it certainly reinforced certain things for me. And I think in some ways it changed my outlook on life. I think that the biggest thing that it really drove home for me was that there's so much in this world that I can't control, that I have no control over. And there's always going to be things that I can't control. But that I have a responsibility to myself and my family. As a leader of the family, I have a responsibility to people here at the agency. I have a responsibility to people within my community. And I think what was really, I wouldn't say eye-opening, because I think I'd always kind of viewed it this way, but what really was driven home for me was to really make sure that I'm taking care of those things and I'm focused on those things and I'm doing what I can do within the realm of those things. And that whatever's going on out in the world, while I'm not empathetic or not concerned about it, I don't allow those things to control me really emotionally or in any other way. So I think that was one of the biggest changes for me on my outlook. We also had, especially early on, so much time. We had to figure out, what are we going to do? There's no more travel time to and from the office. There's no more travel time to and from the schools. There's just so much more time. I think it allowed our family to really focus on how it can be intentional and purpose driven in everything that we do, not just in our home, but in our community and everywhere around us. So where can we be spending our time? How should we be spending our time and our resources? So I think that was the biggest reinforcement, I guess I would say, because that had always kind of been there, but it really kind of drove that home as we were in the middle of this and trying to make our way through it.
Yeah, it kind of brings to mind this sociological theory of social role and social role theory that we all identify as various social roles. And so I am a business owner, I am a father, or I am a mother, I am a citizen, I am a, et cetera. And role strain occurs when basically your allegiance or effort in one role injures your ability to deliver on your kind of self-perceptions or your definition of what your responsibilities are in your other role or roles, right? And, what's interesting is if you take like working moms, for instance, during the pandemic, role strain became incredibly real, because there's I'm the mother, I'm, in some family contexts, I am the caretaker, and the homeschooler and et cetera. But I've got this job and I am a professional and an executive, et cetera, et cetera. And the demands of one social role, became significantly more intense than another role. And that strain did a lot of, had a lot of impacts on, different groups of people based on what their roles were. But it sounds like where a lot of people, experience more role strain for various reasons, whatever their context is during the pandemic, that actually your role strain was lessened. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe you were over-rotated towards work and not as much towards family and community, and that the pandemic gave you the context for balancing out those social roles. Is that right?
Yep, I would say that's a really good way to look at it, and a good perspective. I think we did a really good job as a family. My wife and I think it changed. It gave me the ability to take on a lot of roles that I think would have been assumed in a lot of the instances you described that a spouse should do. For instance, I would be at home on calls, usually internal calls, and if it was an hour-long call, I would be doing dishes or laundry while we're talking, or I'm picking things up because I'm at the house, and Corey might actually be at her office working, and so I think it allowed for all that. I think for me, where it really, kind of hit home was that I realized that I needed a balance in my life, because the first 2 months after we all went home were really hard, very, very hard for me. Almost to the point, which I don't know that I've ever been depressed, but I would say if I'd been close to it before, that was certainly the time period for it. But I realized there was kind of a balance that I had to achieve in my life. And it really came down to, relationally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. As long as I was really putting in effort and time into those 4 areas of my life, then things were really good, really, no matter what was going on around me. So, yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, one of the great benefits of being with a group of people that we are with now and that we were with going through the pandemic is that we're surrounded by so many great role models, and you're definitely chief among them. Right. You were a real inspiration through the entire pandemic, which is still ongoing. But I think influences like yours went a long way towards boosting people's optimism and taking advantage of and finding the opportunities and taking advantage of them that the strange time in history had presented us with. Did you? Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, if I appreciate you saying that. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think that a lot of the changes that you brought to the table for the agency really allowed me to feel that way, right? Like there were I picked up some hobbies and I think some good things that just I would have never done or hadn't been able to do had we not kind of rolled out a lot of the changes that we did, which were driven by you. And so, man, I tell you, I looked around, I talked to a lot of people throughout, and still to this day, and I'm just thankful, very thankful to be where I'm at compared to where a lot of other people are. And so those changes that were largely driven by you bringing those to the table really allowed for that. And so if I did have any influence whatsoever, it was because you put me and others in position to be able to do that. So very grateful.
No, you're right. It was all me.
I know. That's what I'm trying to. I mean, this is the Hey Bret Star show. So
yeah. Well, no, that's a different show. I should turn the sign off for this show. No, that's not true at all, but we can fight about that at another time. I was thinking about this question before we started recording, and I've decided now to ask you, did we ever become the agency that you wanted us to be?
Oh, man. I think the answer to that is yes. And I think we'll always, I didn't know what I wanted this agency to become in the sense that I wasn't putting too much expectation on that. I know that we've always had visions. I've had a vision, and when I'd be at my house or out on a bike ride or whatever, thinking about the agency, what I wanted it to be. I don't know if this last year is what I imagined, but I can say that I was incredibly proud to be an owner of this agency for so many different reasons. And so I think there are a lot of parts of the agency that I kind of envisioned and hoped for, maybe some that I'd hoped for that I'm now glad won't come to fruition, more than likely. But I can say that where we've been over the last couple of years, very, very proud of when people ask about where I work or what I do or what our agency is like. When I describe it, I talk about it. I feel very proud of what it is. But it is something. What it is today happened, I think, in part because of the pandemic, and I think a lot of great things that have happened were a result of the pandemic that I don't know if we would have achieved without it. In many ways, I think there's so many silver linings to the pandemic, and it's really easy to focus on the negative. But I sometimes have survivor's guilt, if you will, and I don't mean to use that word lightly because I know it's a significant thing. But I don't talk about my experience in the pandemic very often because for myself and my family, it was. We grew a lot, and a lot of really good things came from it. and I think our agency is very similar. And so I sometimes feel bad talking about that because I know how many people have suffered through it and how difficult it's been, but I also try to focus on the positive. And what our agency has become through the pandemic, I think in part was because of the pandemic, but I'm also very proud of where we're at today.
Yeah, we made a lot of progress towards something during the pandemic. You know, there's the obvious signs of, growth. We doubled. We didn't lose anybody. We didn't have to fire anybody. And now we're looking at more growth down the road and, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of visible, tangible signs that, we moved in the right direction. But also it just feels more like a place that I want to work than it ever has before, and it also feels like we're getting, a lot closer to something that's meaningful beyond the work that we do in a way that I haven't really, felt before, that our potential to, just kind of impact the world, feels different. And it feels like a lot of the things that we're achieving go well beyond, professional services. And that's great. But I'm wondering, what was it about the pandemic that allowed all of this innovation to take place? What was it about the pandemic that gave us permission to try out things that maybe would have seemed crazy in other times, but, and probably in the back of our heads, we've been wanting to do for a long time?
Yeah. I think we felt like it was important that we humanize the moment. And when this goes way back to, again, one of the initial moments that you and I had early on in our development of our relationship, many, 2 decades ago almost. You had made a comment that business is personal. We would always hear people say, it's just business. It's not personal. It's just business. And you'd always made the comment, business is personal. And that really stuck with me early. I mean, I was early coming out of college, hearing that, thinking about it. And that was a very different perspective than anything I'd ever heard, or it was just probably the first time I'd ever heard that. And so it really sunk in. And I think we were in a moment in time where I think you certainly knew, and I think we had an idea that it was going to get really hard. Mm-hmm. And trying to marry our work lives, our personal lives, everything that was about to be happening with this virus that we knew nothing about. I think we just had the ability to look at it and say, what are all the ways that we can make everybody's lives easier, which might fly in the face of what people would traditionally do, right? So, going to 3-day weekends, the quiet times that we implemented, even as simple as, simple but significant, I think, to people on our team, was when we started providing meals. People could order through Home Chef or whatever. We've covered that for them, once or twice a week. And that made such a huge difference. And the cost was somewhat irrelevant at that point in time, because the impact that it had on their personal lives, because, it can be easy to forget, but you just think back to how hard it was to do anything at that point in time. Couldn't get any groceries. You didn't have time to do all of these things. So having that provided was big. But I just think it allowed us to look at it and say, well, what should we be doing here? How can we prioritize our people? But then do some of the things that we think we would really like to come out on the other side of this, having implemented, like the 3-day weekends and a lot of our processes that we built out. I think we just realized that we needed a real human moment here. And
isn't that
came
interesting?
In a big way.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting that, we decided to focus on the people, right? I mean, and that wasn't, a lot of people immediately said, we're going to focus on the business and we need to do whatever it takes to protect the business. And we took a different path, which is we need to focus on the people and do whatever it takes to protect our people. And then it had all of these, unintended positive consequences on the business. I mean, if you had told me in April of 2020 that 2 years later that we would be double in size and, planning to double again, I mean, to ring the cliche bell, I would have told you were crazy. And yet, that's what happened. But, it's funny. I was thinking about what you said about, that exchange that we had, all business is personal. And, you and I may not have understood how true that was back then. You know what I mean? But now, over the last, even 5 years, I mean, you can really see that anybody who believes that you can separate, the business, spreadsheet side of, your ownership in something from your emotions and your, family and all that stuff is it's just crazy. I mean, it can't be that way. And every decision that you make, is personal because it's impacting your life or someone else's life every time.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I don't believe things happen by chance. And I think back to the last several years, even, a year or two leading up to the pandemic, we went through a period of changes that we were trying to implement into our agency that were very different for us. Mm-hmm. It was unusual for us and atypical. It went against our character, and we were trying to implement some things. To your comment about the spreadsheets, managing a business by the spreadsheet, we really kind of went down that path, and we really focused on managing the numbers, and all of this was leading up to the pandemic, and we came to realize that, man, that just wasn't for us, so we scrapped that, and so we immediately started trying to get back to who we were, and we started seeing a quick uptick in morale and the growth, and then the pandemic hit, and I think, shortly thereafter, I think it gave us a great perspective on what we really needed to focus on. I think that really drove home the point for us. And so, it was, I think it was a very, you look at it at a macro level, just focusing on doing what the people needed, was the biggest thing I think we did throughout the pandemic. We didn't focus on numbers. We said we were going to keep everybody on the pirate ship. Nobody was getting off the pirate ship throughout this process. And we buckled down and we went to work to make sure that didn't happen. And a lot of organizations would have looked at it a little bit differently. They would have looked at the spreadsheet and said, we need some people to walk the plank.
Yeah. Well, that was April of 2020 when we, sent out a note to everyone in the agency saying we won't fire anyone, we won't lay anyone off during the pandemic, no matter how long it lasts. And we did it. I didn't know, and I don't think any of us knew how we were going to do it, but we did it. Fancy that. How about that? Pretty crazy when you think about it. But, we knew we were going to go through some tough times, and we were right. We went through some tough times. Did you ever feel at any point like we were going to, fail, like we were going to go bankrupt, or, the Star Conspiracy wouldn't be around 5 years from now, or we were going to have to lay off half the company? Did you ever have a freak out or just get really?
The first couple of months, I think, was it June and July, I would say, because even April and May, we actually did really well closing new business. And then June and July rolled around, and they got ugly really fast. And August, that summer was just a hard summer. It was really ugly. And I think, we have been a resilient group, everybody here at the agency, over the years. And so we have battled through some challenges that we faced. We'd never faced one like this. And I felt optimistic, but there were a couple of times I was looking down at the spreadsheets wondering, like, how is this going to work out? And I think, again, what I believe made such a huge difference was, instead of focusing on the potential bad outcomes that we could find ourselves in, during that period of time, we just tried to pump as much optimism, both into the agency, but really out into the market, that we possibly could. And we focused on abundance. We focused on lifting all boats. And we made a lot of decisions that weren't financially, they weren't decisions that somebody would look at and say, that's a smart financial decision. But it was done in the mindset of abundance and helping raise all boats. lift all boats. And so we came out of the summer. I believe strongly that it was that push that we made that made a very sudden turn, or allowed for a very sudden turnaround, and then things just took off.
Yeah.
And so I was worried during that period of time, but I loved that our agency didn't focus on the fear and allow that to paralyze us. We went the exact opposite direction, and I think it made a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to your point, it wasn't just a marketing message that we were putting out, nor was it just like an employee, I'm doing air quotes for people who are listening to this, an employee communications message. It was a real thing. To your point, we made counterintuitive decisions in the senior leadership team meetings that, no one's going to write a case study about it, as being a brilliant financial decision. But it worked for us. What's that?
I said probably because they wouldn't even believe that we did it.
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. Yeah, it did. And we did a lot of things right. And, I say that without vanity. That's just objective. If you look at where we are now and, what our experience was, we did a lot of things right that I think are wired for the future. It wasn't just about handling a crisis. It was about using it as an opportunity to, rewire our agency and, not only make it work for the future, but also to take aim at a lot of conventions that we know don't work, that are inherent in how people view agency structures and professional services companies, consulting company structures. And we're basically like, what do we have to lose? So I think we, also just bucked convention, not just in the decisions that we were making in response to a crisis, but in the long-term decisions that we made about how we reorganized our business. But I could talk about that stuff forever. Did a lot of right, good things, but we did some really dumb things too. What do you kind of look back on and wish we had back? Like, what decision did the SLT make that you wish, that you think was a real mistake, or that you wish we had back?
That's a great question. I oftentimes like to reflect on things that I didn't do well to learn from them, but I didn't spend a lot of time doing that. I felt like we made a lot of really good moves. Did I know they were going to turn out the way they did at the time? No, I was hopeful that they would. But I think if I were to pick something,
this is the one thing that everyone brings up. This thing.
Is it really?
Yes. It was totally my fault.
Well,
everyone brings up the fantasy football draft where everyone had to have 3 clients. And, so if one of the goals of this, project was to figure out the things we did right and the things we did wrong. Oh, it was awful. Trust me.
Maybe
People who weren't even there talk about it. It was that bad.
Talking about it in the bathroom.
Remember that time? But, I think it is valuable to see such a strong trend because it wasn't the execution of that idea that was the problem. And, I'm sure people have heard this in every other, episode. But this was when we, basically tried to distribute the workload, across the entire agency. And basically have everyone manage some accounts. We call it like a strategic lead or something like that. And so everybody had to pick 3 clients. And for a lot of people who had 8 or 10 or whatever, that meant divesting themselves of certain clients. And for other people who had never managed an account in their life out of creative or out of development or, something like that, they had to pick 3 clients. And so, that's what happened. And we did it. And it was a complete disaster. I mean, we didn't lose clients or, it didn't create a CX problem, but the EX problem that it created, the employee experience problem that it created resonated for, over a year because, so first of all, that's the background, but it's useful to look at that and figure out what the, drivers of the wrongness were. And the drivers of the wrongness were that it smacked of, one driver was that it smacked of a lack of awareness for the significance of, different roles inside the organization because of an isolation from, the closest point of work where the work gets done. And it also pushed people too far, too hard, and too fast. The people who were giving up accounts didn't want to give them up because they were attached to them, and so that was a blow to their sense of agency and autonomy, and ran against what they believe and what they want to do. For people who are forced to take accounts, they got in other jobs so that they wouldn't have to do account management, and it's a hard job. And so now we're forcing people to, basically, use the other side of their brain, and they don't want to do that. But it was also taking away their agency and their autonomy and their sense of, self-determination and all that stuff. And so there's so many drivers of that decision that were so wrong. And if I was going to, pick one thread and pull on it to use in the future, it'd be just like, make sure that you think through the consequences of how people are going to view themselves after that change and what they're going to think about what they gained or what they lost. And I was thinking about it on paper, it was X's and O's, and it made so much sense on paper. It's kind of like, did you watch that Lakers show?
Yeah.
I
haven't yet, but I will be.
Brilliant coach who, came in when Dr. Jerry Buss took over the Lakers and was a real genius. And he would, write these incredibly intricate plays on paper, but then they had to be adjusted when they were used in the real world. And that was kind of my, on paper moment. On paper, it looked great. In practice, it was, fucking stupid.
I can tell that you've been reflecting on this for a little while. Maybe it's stuck in your...
How can you not? How can you not? And everybody told me I was fucking up. I mean, the whole SLT was like, nah.
We're far from perfect individuals. We're very flawed individuals. So I'm sure there were several decisions that we made that we probably would like to do over again. But when I look back over the last couple of years, the big decisions we made, I think the ones, especially when we focused on the people, we got right.
Well, so, now we're, I won't say on the other side of the pandemic, though. I was at a little mini conference this morning where an economist spoke and said that we are in a post-pandemic economy. And I was like, don't say it out loud. But, people are increasingly starting to think that way. More and more people are starting to think that way. And so when you look back and you reflect on your experiences as an owner, you work in the business too. So, that's different than, being an owner in terms of just what you pay attention to and what your experience is. There's a shareholder experience and there's an employee experience and, et cetera. What keeps, everyone has options, right? Like, it's like when you are an owner or shareholder in a business, it means that you dedicate an inordinate amount of your time to that entity and that group of people. But it also means that, you can do other things, right? Like any of us could have chosen to, do other things over the last 2 years or at any point. What keeps you engaged as, a shareholder or an owner of this business?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. One, I think just we have a unique agency here in regards to the type of work that we do. And I think that's really special and really cool. And I think continuing to evolve that and build upon that is just really exciting. But in addition to that, I would say we have such a great group of people. And I don't mean that to sound cliche, but man, we really have a fascinating cast of characters that I learned so much from. It's such a good group of individuals. I love my team, the team that I'm on. I love them very, very much. And they're fantastic individuals. And, throughout the agency, you can't talk to anybody here without walking away feeling that way about them. And, I have a number of friends that I talk to, my brother and sister, and all of them have their, professional careers. And we talk about what life is like. And it's just a very unique place, especially to find an agency like this in Fort Worth or just a business in general here in Fort Worth. when people hear me here in Fort Worth, especially hear me talk about what we're doing and how our business operates, they're just flabbergasted. It's hard for them to understand. And we just got such a unique agency with such a unique cast of characters that it's hard not to just be excited about what this agency can become and what it has become. And within the last 2 years, especially as we've doubled in size with the not just the talent, but on a personal level, the individuals that we've added throughout the world, really, it's just exciting to see the opportunities that lie in front of us. So I would say certainly the agency and what we can become, but the people here, you're just not going to go anywhere else and find. You're going to be able to walk into your office or hop onto a Zoom call and have a chat thread unfold like you can at the Star Conspiracy, and everybody embrace that and roll with it.
Well, you're getting older, Kevin. I don't know if you knew that. But how old were you when you started the agency?
22.
22 years old. And we've been working together for almost 2 decades now. So you are getting older. You're not old yet. So, you've seen some really crazy, weird, tough situations. You've seen, incredibly bountiful, abundant situations. All kinds of twists and turns in the economy and all kinds of, twists and turns inside our own organization. Because you are older and because you've had so much experience, you're in a position to, give advice to people who are considering a career in the exciting field of agency ownership. What would your advice be to people based on everything that you've learned, especially over the last 2 years?
Don't do it.
Besides, don't do it.
No, that's not true. That was, I think it's, and just surround yourself with people that you can trust and that you like working with. That's a big part of it. You're going to be spending, if you're starting an agency or really any business, you're going to be spending more time with those individuals than you are with your friends, your family. So just make sure it's people that you trust and you like and you enjoy being around, and build your agency in that way. But also, build your agency with, and I think this is something that we're certainly getting better at, but build it with diversity in mind. Because, I can tell the agency we are today compared to the agency we were, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even, we're such this place is much more special today because of the people we have here than, it was 5 years ago. It's just richer. It's, the experience is greater. You learn so much more. And, just surround yourself with good people.
Yeah. On that diversity part, specifically, it's hard to catch up on if you don't start with that vision to begin with. It's not only hard to catch up on, but you also miss all of, the unique, diverse perspectives during that, kind of critical formation period of your company that I know would have helped us in so many ways. That's great advice. And going back to, your previous advice, I was thinking about that very topic the other day. How many pickles have we climbed into because we worked with people that we didn't trust or didn't like, because we believed or hoped in the outcome that they were promoting, or, believed and hoped in, whatever the benefit was supposed to be. And we would all kind of, say as an aside, I don't know if I trust this person, or I don't know if I like this person. It's like, yeah, she's great at her job, he's great at his job, but I don't really want to spend any time with him. And inevitably, that's been the source of like 95% of our issues.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. But, we can't beat ourselves up over it too much. Sometimes hindsight's the luxury that we obviously don't have in the moment. But you're right. You find yourself in those moments where you're just not quite sure. You probably shouldn't pull the trigger in those moments. So, yeah,
I'll never do it again.
We live and we learn, right?
Life truly is too short. All right, Kevin. Well, it's been one of the privileges and pleasures of my life to own a business with you. I love you. I think about you all the time. And I'm really grateful for our conversation today. So thanks for making the time.
Likewise. Thank you. I feel the same way. We are where we are today because of you. So I'm just glad to be a part of it.
I want to hear you say, I love you.
I love you, Bret.
I love you, Kevin.
I love you.
Press stop.
I love you.
If somebody told you 15 years ago, hey, we should start doing scenario planning for a global pandemic, what would you have said?
I would have just kept walking and ignored all of it. I was taking my cues largely from you and Dan. And so what you guys were bringing to all of our meetings as we were discussing this, I was taking that home and I said, well, Bret said so. And so Corey and everybody was like, well, then, okay, then we must do it. Potentially take back was, you remember when we tried to, or how we tried to distribute the work throughout one team?
God damn it. Yes.
That was the one thing that I thought of. As you look back, that's the one thing that I looked at and said, we probably could have done that a little bit differently. But
are you sure you've not seen the other episodes?
Things,
I get it. Message sent. That was fucking awful. Worst idea ever.
Where it went south was when you went in and you had the first choice of your top 3 clients, and you just took the 3 best clients and left it.
Me? That's not how it worked. It was round robin.
I know. I'm joking.
But you're getting older.
Yeah.
And I feel like also there's like this dog years phenomena with, being an owner at the Star Conspiracy. Like for every year that you were an owner, it's like 5 years of being an owner somewhere else or, being on the SLT.
Teach you everything I know.